Welcome back, everybody. Senate Republican Pete Ricketts has introduced companion legislation to the House's ban on congressional stock trading, also named the Stop Insider Trading Act. Senator Ricketts joins us this morning. And, sir, thank you for being with us. Let's talk a little bit about this act that was passed by the House. Where does it stand in the Senate right now, just in terms of the support you have from your colleagues?
Well, we're going to be working with leadership to be able to get it on the floor. It passed the House with Democrat support. And as you know, with very few exceptions, we have to get to 60 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. So we're going to need Democrat support over here as well. But this, the Stop Insider Trading Act really addresses an issue with regard to credibility for the Congress. Our approval rating is about 15% right now, and about 80% of Americans think we do a bad job of separating our financial interests from the information that we get. And of course, nobody should be coming to Washington, D.C. to profit off of insider trading. We're sent here to be able to serve our constituents. So this is common sense legislation to take a strong stand to prevent people from buying new stock once they get here, and also requires people to notify the public when they're going to sell stock they already own, and with significant penalties if they fail to do that.
Let's talk through a few things. First of all, not that you ever want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but there have been complaints from both sides. On the one hand, some members would like to see this extend to the administration. Others say that it doesn't go far enough, that there should be much tighter legislation that comes on this. What do you say to other senators who bring those concerns up?
Well, with all legislation, if you've got something that everybody's complaining about, maybe you got something that's pretty close to what can get passed and be a compromise. What we're trying to do with this legislation is really address the issue specifically here in the Congress. I mean, we have seen it where people publish, for example, the former speaker's stock trades, and it makes money. So crazy as it sounds, it becomes a legitimate stock trading strategy. That just shouldn't be. What we want to do is make sure we're not locking out people who come, say, from successful business. We don't want to, keep a successful business person from coming to the U.S. Congress by saying you can't have any stock. What we're going to say is you can't buy any more once you get here. And if you're going to sell anything you have to notify people. And there's a 10% penalty plus disgorgement of profits to be able to, if you fail to do that. So we think the penalties are very significant with this. And again, we're focused on what we're doing here in the Congress. That's where we think we need to address, because, as I said, getting back to that 15% approval rating, it's clear that the American people are not trusting our institutions. And if this is one thing we can do to be able to reinforce that trust, we ought to take that step to be able to make sure people know that we're not using our inside information to be able to profit personally.
If the market crashes, does the 7 to 14-day advance notice still stand?
It stands in all cases. So if you are holding on to stock and you want to sell it, you have to notify people 7 days in advance. And this is really, try to get at this idea that, again, if you own stock coming into the Congress and you get inside information, people are worried that you use that to sell. We've had in the past, for example, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee selling $1.5 million worth of stock right before a pre-COVID market crash. And even the perception of that impropriety is going to be damaging to the credibility of the institution. So by giving people, the market, 7 days notice that you're intending to do this, they can make the judgment on whether or not they should be taking that step in their own portfolios. It'll give time for the market to be able to really digest that information.
Who's responsible for enforcement of this law if it were to become law?
So we will have the same people who enforce our current election laws right now our current ethics laws. It'll be the ethics committee that takes this up, and we'll enforce it through the penalties for that.
Senator, you are one of the wealthiest senators, one of the top 10 wealthiest senators, because of your family's relationship with TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab stock that you own through some of these things. In the mandatory disclosures for the Senate, it shows that you're worth $74 to $293 million. Is that why you're leading the charge on this? People look at this and say, hey, you've had some sales yourself over time. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I come from the securities industry, and obviously in the securities industry, we've got very strict rules with regard to insider trading. And frankly, we have got the most transparent, liquid capital markets in the world because of proper regulation. And so insider trading is one of the issues we deal with. We've got strict laws against it, and it's part of what gives us credibility as an industry. And so what I want to do is take that same set of rules, or that same idea that you can't do insider trading in the securities industry, and bring it to the U.S. Congress, and again, put real teeth into this law. Again, say if you've got $1 million transaction and you don't disclose that you're going to sell that stock in the proper time frame, you're going to pay a $100,000 fine plus give up all the profits on it. That's a significant penalty. So that's part of what we can do to really get members of Congress' attention that they got to follow the rules. There's going to be significant penalties, and that will again really address the even appearance of impropriety here by saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do well in advance, and by the way, I can't buy anything more once I get here, no more individual stocks. I think that will help us restore that credibility that we need to do with the American people. Again, Nebraskans don't send their elected officials to Washington, D.C. to line their own pockets. This is about public service, not profit. And so we need to be taking these types of steps to assure the American people and my fellow Nebraskans that we are not using insider information to benefit ourselves.
I was just looking at the numbers for the House of Representatives. That passed by a vote of 232 to 198. They did get some Democratic support. I think it was just over a dozen Democratic representatives who voted with them. But that's 53%, not 60%, the 60 votes that you need in the Senate. How many Democrats do you have on board who will be willing to vote for this in the Senate?
Well, we're going to be working that issue as we, socialize the idea here, and that's where we want to have an opportunity to work with our leadership about what the best strategy for this is. So that's part of what we're going to be doing here over the next several weeks to try and get this done before we get to the midterm elections.